to Casually Dressed and Deep in Conversation with me, Greg Chalmers. CDDC is sponsored by Pizza Daddy, Lanarkshire's #1 American-style pizza parlour. To stay up to date on new flavours and promotions, then get connected on the socials. The Instagram handle is @RealPizzaDaddy and the website is www.thepizzadaddy.co.uk. To see what we're getting up to here at Casually Dressed, then you can find us on Instagram with the handle @CDDC Podcast, and on Twitter it is @PodcastCDDC. Also, as you're watching this on YouTube, then please hit those like and subscribe buttons. And with me this evening is a very saucy bear. It's my usual co-host, Christopher Shields.
How you doing, my man?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. Our guest this evening is strength and conditioning coach and lecturer, George Wishart. How are you, pal?
Not bad, mate, not bad. How are you guys?
We are smashing. I'm dressed like some sort of funky leisure pirate.
You are, mate. You are.
That's
all good, mate. I'm all good.
Shirt.
Yeah, man.
I like it.
Just renting jet skis in Maui.
The plain white, maybe the plain black.
That's it. Just keeping it simple, mate. Keeping it simple.
That's it. At least we're no peacocking like Greg. You know what I mean?
Well, that's it. Some people need to, mate. Others are comfortable in their appearance. Others need to peacock.
Mate, I'm just selling hollowed out coconuts filled with rum. That's my. Anyway, Gio, how's your lockdown been, mate?
Boring. Nah, I'll take that back. Actually, I'm probably I'm probably one of the kind of few people that on furlough and stuff like that. So I've been working from home, which has been a bit of a nightmare. And then obviously not getting to train, not getting to see anybody. It's pretty depressing at times, isn't it? What about you guys?
Just podcasting, mate.
Well, yeah, actually, we'd be quite lucky, really, that we kind of had the podcast. Obviously, with me moving over to Northern Ireland just before it all kicked up. Well, actually, I moved it forward a week because I saw the way things were going, and I thought, right, we'll get over here. And they obviously just struggled to get work. So luckily, I have now. But yeah, it's basically just been. We've been quite lucky to have this because it's given us a little extra focus and something to kind of structure our week and take away the monotony.
Yeah,
man.
What about you, Greg?
Well, basically, I have all my work's been postponed until next year. So I have adorned the holiday clothes and settled into a life of pleasure.
Ah,
so
I like it.
Yeah, man. So it's got to be.
Become a full-time leisure cat.
That's it, mate. That's it. Just snapbacks and happy thoughts. That's me.
Well, speaking of work getting postponed, Greg, I was meant to start a new job in strength and conditioning at a university on the first day of lockdown. So I found out like that morning that I wasn't able to work. But I've been quite lucky that I'm still doing my lecturing, or I was. Now it's summer holidays now, but that kind of gave me a structure to the week as well. But sometimes you just thought everybody else on furlough chilling out, and I was stressed out my nut trying to get stuff done. So sometimes you kind of wish for just a couple of days off to chill out as well.
Because you would have been having to deal with the whole exam and coursework crisis that all the students were having to deal with.
Exactly. I think it's probably worse for high school and stuff like that. Their exams come out today, and there's all sorts of issues about the grading and stuff like that.
Is there?
Yeah, there's been. Well, I've just seen kind of 5-10 minutes looking through things on Twitter, but it seems like they've downgraded a lot of students and stuff like that. So I suspect there's going to be lots of appeals, which is probably going to cause all sorts of hassle. But in terms of me with the college, our department was pretty good, handled it pretty well. I've got a really good team there, so it kind of was. It was all right. It was bearable to get through. At least we got our students through at the end.
Yeah. So how do you go about kind of all the? Because obviously there's a massive kind of infrastructure issue there. So it'd be like, straight away you've got to kind of resolve, like move everything online. Did you already have that sort of stuff in place, or was there a lot of stuff that you've kind of had to kind of rethink and kind of come at from a different angle?
So from the college perspective, some lecturers do quite a lot of stuff online, some people don't. It's just kind of up to them how they want to run their courses. But for myself, I started at the beginning of the academic year last year, but I started 8 weeks into the term, so I didn't have very much time to prepare lectures and courses and stuff like that. So I felt like I was always kind of playing catch up a little bit. So when it went to lockdown with a couple of weeks off, and I transferred everything I wanted to do online, and then kind of taught from there. So I think over the rest of the entire course, I got through every assessment that the students were meant to be doing, if they were still at the college, other than 1 or 2 practical assessments that then get estimated for SQA.
Wow, man. Right, I think to give people a bit of backstory on just who you are and what you do, George, if you can sort of give us a wee bit of an insight of what led to you going into strength and conditioning and sports science and all that.
Yeah, so I went to high school and I hated school. The only things I liked were music, art and PE or sport. But everybody knows you can't make any money from either of them. So I never really thought that you could do anything with the kind of 3 categories. So I left school, didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up doing an electrical apprenticeship just because I kind of fell into that. My mate Shug is a spark, and his uncle got me a job, and kind of just went through that because there was nothing else to do really. But I had an injury when I used to play football when I was younger. Broke my ankle, gave me lots of bother. A few years later, I ended up dislocating my knee. Again, I had loads of bother, and it recurred again, so a second time. I went to physios and stuff like that, and I just felt like nobody was able to really help me. It just wasn't really getting better. And it wasn't until someone recommended me to go see a strength and conditioning coach. After a few times, actually, I eventually started training there, and I just fell in love with training kind of thing. And I fell in love with, or I was kind of fascinated by how much this guy had knowledge on the subject of the human body in terms of rehab, performance, just everything. So I trained there for about a year and a bit or something like that. And then after that, I was kind of like, do you know what? I don't really like my job, and this is what I want to do. So I ended up quitting my job, and I looked at courses online first, and I kept on seeing like 5 hires, 4 hires, A's and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't have any hires. So I was kind of like, how am I going to get into a sports science undergrad degree? And I found a kind of route through college. So I went and done a HND at Glasgow Clyde College, and it was in fitness, health and exercise. And with that course, you got a level 3 personal trainer qualification. And if you got an A in both your years, you were able to go straight into 3rd year of an undergrad degree at UWS. So by doing it that way, I wasn't missing out or taking an extra year to get there. I was just doing the first 2 years at college, going straight into uni at 3rd year. So I managed to get my 2 A's and went straight into 3rd year, done my 3rd year, got my honours in the 4th year. And then I got a scholarship to do a master's at Glasgow Uni. And I finished up that on September last year, and then I went straight in 3 weeks after, started lecturing. So it was really quick, the transfer there. But I contribute to quite a lot of the stuff I've done to stuff I've done outside of uni as well. So a lot of people go do a 4-year degree or a 5-year if you do a master's and don't get any outside work. So I volunteered at 2 football clubs, done an internship at a school of sport, personal training for years. So I got loads of experience out with the actual degree, or at least opportunities to apply the theoretical knowledge and the kind of practical application. And I think that gives you a better understanding of like the jobs and what's needed in these kind of roles, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's quite a jump, man. It's quite a jump to go from like what is deemed to be, especially nowadays, it's kind of right when you get out of school, go and get yourself a trade, son. You get yourself a trade, you'll never be out of work. To go from that into and to be stable, like time served electrician, good to go. You essentially could get work anywhere. To then go and actually, no, you know what? I don't want to do this. This isn't me. It's quite a jump to make, man. It's impressive stuff, man.
Yeah, I was speaking to I mean, just recently, and it's a lot of people. You either have a job that kind of aligns with your values and what you want to do, but a lot of the time that doesn't pay the most amount of money.
Yeah.
So it's either you do that or you kind of sell out and go for another job and make money, but you're unhappy because you're not actually fulfilling any kind of purpose as well. So you kind of get this issue between both. So I went the other way because I feel like if you're doing something you like, you're going to continue educating yourself in it, and eventually you're going to kind of become a master of that trade. And anything that you become really, really good at, people will pay you the right amount to do that job, essentially. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. They say if you what is it? If you enjoy your
If
work,
you enjoy what you're doing, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Go on, Shieldsy.
I like it.
Maybe if you look at the whole, but yeah, there's definitely days when you get up and you're like, I can't be bothered doing this.
Yeah, mate.
Yeah.
Especially when you're marking student papers until like 3 a.m.
That sounds rough, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because essentially you just be reading the same thing over and over again, just in different words. It's just paraphrasing what the previous person wrote.
Yeah, but it's good when you see a student who's kind of went above and beyond, or who's really went in depth and try to display their knowledge, and maybe sometimes you even learn something from them. Do you know what I mean? Because they've went above and beyond. And then it's good, obviously, when you've got other students at the kind of bottom end who you can actually really give good feedback to actually help improve. It's those people in the middle probably that it kind of gets repetitive. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I've found that myself. Whenever you're teaching, you say that you spend kind of 80% of your time on 20% of the students, and it's like that. It's dead easy to grade the people like at the top end and the people at the bottom end, but it's all these guys and girls in the middle that are just pure grey men, just touching the line and doing everything. Just they're not highlighting themselves in a good or a bad way. They're so difficult to kind of highlight and kind of deal with, or not say deal with, but get through and actually get good benefit out of them, because they might not be that interested. They might just want to just go, well, I'm just going to touch the line. Pass is a pass. Well, see you later. Tick the box. See you in a bit.
One of the things that I say to students, and also when you're working in kind of applied field and sports science and S&C and stuff like that, is that if you've got, let's say you've got a football squad, or let's just say you've got 20 athletes essentially, usually what you'll find is you'll have 5 athletes who go above and beyond, who are really keen, and you have 5 at the bottom who can't really be arsed, and you have this 10 in the middle, and that 10 in the middle is what really you should be focusing on, because that 10 needs to try and jump up to the top 5 and not get dragged down by the bottom 5. Mm-hmm. And it's the same in sports, it's the same in uni or college or whatever else as well. It's too easy for the people kind of in the mid-range to get dragged down by people like, let's go do this, let's do that, rather than kind of jump to the level of the people that's like, no, let's not go drink, let's go do this and we'll get this lab report done or whatever else. Mm-hmm. These kind of things. Or you're sacrificing, which I felt like I done. I felt like I sacrificed a lot of my time in relationships and stuff like that to do an internship, work a part-time job, do a master's, do you know what I mean, just pay bills. It's a lot of stuff all on top of each other. And when I was doing that, I was also PTing. So like I was a personal trainer for 15, 20 hours a week. I was doing an internship at 16 hours a week. And then I was got a master's degree alongside that. And then you've got all your coursework as well. Do you know what I mean? So something's kind of got to give. But a lot of people don't want to give up anything. So they want to get the best of everything. But if that's the way it is, then you need to be happy with what grade you get or what level of performance you can be at a sport or whatever else.
I think absolutely. The amount you sacrifice is definitely shown in the results that you get, I would say.
Yeah.
Mediocre effort, mediocre results. Yes.
You're full of catchphrases in it, Chris.
Yeah.
No, man.
It's just input versus output.
I've got a big bag of them here.
I've got a
big bag of catchphrases.
Just Roy Walker. You Roy Walker. Is that what it is? I know you're...
but it's not the one.
Mr. Chips, that's you.
Not the first time I've been called that.
You do look a bit carby.
Hey,
copyright James O'Brien.
Big carby Chris.
Mate.
The big carby bear.
Jim O'Brien, like 5 minutes into a podcast, absolutely killed me off.
Oh, I did him straight off the bat. Jim's just like, mate, you're looking a bit carby.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's not like people get you down, man.
Jokes, sweet.
Right. Nobody can say anything. It's lockdown, man. You can do what you like.
Oh, mate, I've been eating like it's Christmas since February, mate. I'm loving life.
Do you think see when we get to Christmas, do you think people are going to be like, oh.
No, man, you're just going to kick it up, just double down.
double dauphinois, monsieur.
Exactly, just double down on it, man. Why not?
Hey, come across with a turkey.
Real comfy.
Right, okay, so just to get back on track. Gio, so see for anyone listening that doesn't know what sports science, inverted commas, is, can you try and give us a wee breakdown on it?
Yeah, so a lot of people I always feel like a lot of people don't really know what a sports scientist does or what an S&C coach does or whatever else. A lot of people kind of think you're like a personal trainer, but for athletes. And I suppose that kind of ticks some of the boxes, but not exactly. So sports science is a multidisciplinary field, and it's kind of concerned with understanding and enhancing sports performance. And it's got three main disciplines to that, which are biomechanics, physiology, and psychology. So biomechanics is the examination of causes and consequences of human movement and its relation to the interaction between the body and apparatus and environment. And it kind of uses mechanical principles to study that area. We've got physiology, which is a branch of biological sciences, and it kind of looks at the response to exercise and training and nutrition that you give the body. And then we've got psychology, which looks at kind of mindset and how the behaviour can affect the performance or negatively affect performance. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does, man. It does. So what's the difference between that and S&C then?
So sports science is kind of like the scientific process that kind of guides sport. So we look at evidence-based studies and we try and extract the information from there and apply that in a sports setting. The difference between sports science and S&C is that what a lot of people forget is strength and conditioning. If you're a strength and conditioning coach, you're a coach. So the difference is in that word coach there. If you're a sports scientist, you maybe, some people don't do, if jobs these days, if you're a sports scientist, S&C coach, a lot of them are kind of interchangeable. But the differences are that if you're a strength and conditioning coach, you're much more of a coach that's using evidence-based practice. So looking at studies to inform your coaching, but you need a lot more of the interpersonal skills, the coaching ability, be able to communicate with people, these kind of skills that are really important to get through to the athletes. So strength and conditioning is really looking at trying to mitigate injury and improve athletic performance, whereas sports science is a whole discipline that could be looking at physical activity, exercise science, preventing disease, all this kind of stuff as well.
All right, okay. Wow.
So a lot of time, if you're working in a kind of pro sports team or something like that, a lot of time you have a sports science department that looks at maybe a lot of the data, the GPS, the heart rate, the physical testing, these kind of things. You have S&C that's looking at the physical development in the gym, speed, agility, strength, power, these kind of things. But a lot of the time they do kind of intertwine a lot with each other.
That's pretty interesting, man. So, like, would you find that, what would you find is like kind of the most prevalent at the moment? Because obviously, do you find that they kind of go pits and falls, that people kind of lean towards more, like, say, strength and conditioning side, or like for example, like it's one of those things you hear a lot of, and like say football or something, like kind of sports science departments. Like, would you say that it's, I don't know, like I was going to try not to use the word, but it seems like it's become quite fashionable to kind of lean towards that sort of side, but I don't know if it's a terrible word to describe.
Fashionable to lean towards what sports science or S&C or just
sports science, like So I feel like I hear kind of people I've really not properly thought out my question here.
I know, so basically
professionalism.
No, but I get what you mean. It's basically if you looked at a linear scale mapping out time, there seems to be a popularity on one side rather than on the other.
In terms of sports science and S&C?
Yeah.
I would say, if I'm not too sure about the difference between that actually, but I would say that S&C is probably the biggest area right now. But, I mean, you're probably going to have both. Do you know what I mean? If you've got a small department, what you usually have is you'll have like a head of head of sports science, and they'll be responsible for the coaching, so they'll be responsible for the S&C as well. If you've got a bigger department somewhere, like if you're looking at football, like Liverpool's got data scientists, PhD students in, they've got data analysts, they might have guys that just look at strictly GPS data. Do you know what I mean? So you've got this.
What's that?
GPS data. So GPS is if you ever watch football or rugby and a team sport and you see the wee bump on the back of their shirts. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. They've got the wee vests, haven't they?
You got the wee sports bras.
Sports bras with it.
Yeah. So the GPS is global positional systems on the back of that there. So what that does is it allows you to collect data on like total distance covered in a game, sprint distance, change of directions, accelerations, decelerations, these kind of things. So we can then look at what are the demands of a competitive match, and then we can then program throughout the week to meet those demands of the game, if that makes sense.
That's in depth, man.
So essentially what you do is, like for example, in strength and conditioning, you do a needs analysis of the sport. Yeah, so you kind of reverse engineer what are the demands of gameplay, or what is the reality of your sport, what happens in the sport. So to do that, we collect GPS, heart rate data, stuff like that, and then we kind of reverse engineer that and try and create drills in line with the head coach. If it's a football coach, you'd be talking to the manager, try to get drills that would elicit the same type of demands as the game, if that makes sense.
Would a nutritionist be brought in as well for like that to amend people's diet to then maximise their potential?
So does that fall under sports science?
So again, you've got on big massive teams, you have psychologists and nutritionists. You might even have lifestyle advisors, but the smaller the scale, the more that one person needs to be a jack of all trades. So
just
in
like
some
going
places,
in and sorting out the wardrobes and that, and just getting them a nice flat.
Chris, see when me and you were at the Vale, we had Coley.
I know that.
No, so we thought that, like, let's say for example, I'm going to start a strength conditioning coach at the uni. A lot of people might be high level in their sport, wanting to compete in games and stuff like that, and they might be moving to Glasgow to come study at a university, and they might only be 18, 19, never moved away from home, stressed out, they've got training, they've got studying, they've got all this kind of stuff. So kind of a lifestyle advisor can help students along those lines, if that makes sense, of trying to sort their life out to compete, to deal with the multiple demands that they have as being like an athlete and a student, if that makes sense.
Oh, right.
I don't know too much about lifestyle advisors, but that seems to be the role that they play in the kind of performance department.
I don't know, why, Chris, did you think that there's like somebody in there going, no, you should really wear that top with those set of jeans?
Mate, you're me as a lifestyle coach, I just expected like the Fab Five to come in like some sort of Netflix special. Like, yes! I mean, so I don't know why.
Somebody comes in and just like, definitely those shoes.
Yeah, just a snapshot into how my brain works there. Really.
So, we've got we had Kirk O'Brien on last week, and we were talking about sort of doping and all that sort of stuff, and he gave us it from a bodybuilder's perspective, right? And we just thought, since you are an expert in your field, that we would ask you a similar sort of question. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you're an expert, but remember, this is a podcast and nobody can see your air quotes, mate. So, we just thought we'd ask you the kind of broader question as well about doping in sport and what your opinion of it is, like, are you for? Well, you can't really be for it because you work in the field, but you know what I mean.
No, so I get what you mean. Are you for it? So if you're speaking to bodybuilders and stuff like that, a lot of them will tell you openly that they take steroids and stuff like that, because at some point you can't deny that exactly. So I'm a UK AD advisor, which is UK anti-doping. So you do a certificate online, it tells you about doping and how to detect, how to manage athletes into making sure that they don't accidentally dope. So I'm definitely not for doping. I'm against doping. But what I think is the main issue around doping and stuff like that is that as long as athletes believe that the playing field isn't level, then they will be willing to risk taking drugs to get an advantage on the competition, if that makes sense. Or at least I feel like a lot of athletes maybe take drugs because they believe everybody else is taking drugs, so they want to be equal. But I think if everybody was completely convinced that no one's on drugs, and if anybody is on drugs, they would definitely get caught, then I think people wouldn't bother with taking drugs.
Yeah,
you mentioned accidentally doping.
Yeah, so there's lots of cases where people get put up for doping and stuff like that, where they may have, let's say they got a medicine from the doctor for being unwell, or they took a protein shake they bought a protein shake from a shop or online or something like that, and they never really realised, but it's got some sort of chemical that's been banned by, for example, WADA, which is World Anti-Doping Agency. They've got a full list that's published online. So there's lots and lots of things. It doesn't need to be like anabolic steroids. There's loads of little things that can cause you to get banned. So a lot of people take things like a pre-workout just to go to the gym and don't realise that that's got some sort of substance in it that if they got tested, they could get a ban from that. So the whole point about being a UK anti-doping advisor is trying to help athletes make the right choices and not get caught out by something silly that they maybe never actually meant to do.
Yeah, it happened to... Sorry, go on.
Yeah, on you go, Chris.
I was going to say, it actually just it happened to Dillian White, the pro boxer, he's fighting. He's actually fighting in the next couple of weeks. But he was the same. Just went and bought something over the counter, Jack 3D. It was like this pre-workout stuff, and he ended up getting a two-year ban or something from all professional boxing. So it's so easy to happen. I mean, it's again happened to a lot of lads. Like the army, it was all kind of there. It is. The podcast bingo, me mentioning the army again.
See, as soon as you said the army, mate, I could see you looked at me like that. I've mentioned the army.
Right, sorry, bit of backstory of this, Gio. Me and Greg have obviously we listen to them back and we realise that we repeat
the same
things. Phrases that we repeat quite a lot. And like I make reference to being in the army like on a podcastly basis. And then sure, I just as I said it slipped out my mouth. I just looked across at Greg and I was like, "Oh, I've done it again."
So whoever had Chris mentioning he was in the army,
so the sweepstake we've lasted what I don't know about 20 minutes.
Yeah. Anyway, mate, you were in the army.
I was in the army for foolish people don't know. No, but no. So, but like we would exactly the same. You would get drugs tested fairly regularly, and it would be the exact same. Lads had to watch what they were taking, kind of supplements wise and all that. And the amount of people that did get caught out just because they didn't know what they were taking in, and that's when they brought in the informed sport. You had to make sure whatever you took, whether you any sort of supplement or whatever you're taking, was on that informed sport website. Otherwise, if it didn't have that wee label on it, don't go anywhere near it because you don't know what's in it.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, right? So here's a question for you. See if, you're saying Dillian White get a 2-year ban for just accidentally buying something, right? 2 year? Like, could you not just go, mercy streak, you guys? I didn't know.
But the thing is, it's completely uneven. Like, so there's another guy, Jarrell Miller, who... an American who was due to fight Anthony Joshua before he lost his titles.
Is that the guy from New York?
Yeah. And he got done. That's why the Anthony Joshua fight never happened and ended up fighting Ruiz. And so he obviously got caught then, only gets 6 months, and then he got caught again, like about a couple of months back. You're going, like, it's one of those things. It's risk versus reward. Some people think, well, I mean, it depends how much do you want to be the kind of heavyweight champion of the world.
I mean, it is cheating. Also, it's cheating, but
100% it's cheating. But it's also for me, it shows a lack of confidence in your own abilities, especially at that level of sport. Yeah, I mean that's if you're not confident. I mean, you've got to be pretty confident because you're a guys that's going to take your face off. But
I would slightly disagree with that though, Chris, because he might have every confidence in his own ability, but he might not believe that someone else is taking something. Do you get what I mean? So that's the issue that we have with it. Do you know what I mean? It's that people probably believe they're the best, but they're like that. Well, somebody else is not far off me, and what if they're on something and I'm not on that? So it's these kind of things. So it comes back to my first point. As long as people still believe that people won't get caught and people will get through the system, people are going to be willing to do it to get to. In their mind, they might be trying to just get a competitive edge, but in some people's mind, they might actually just try to be got on the same level that they suspect everybody else is on. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's a massive issue.
What we're looking for is transparency in sport.
Yeah,
you've heard it here first, dudes. Gio, you were talking about the other night when we spoke. You were talking about a thing called blood doping, and it does seem slightly vampiric. What are you looking at me like for, Chris? It does, man.
Strange word.
Well, got a dictionary in front of him.
I know, I've never heard that word before.
I forgot. Wait a minute. Gio, you've got no excuse. You're a learned gentleman. Chris was in the army, just in case you didn't know. No, right, so tell us about blood doping, right? Because it's something that I had never heard of before, and it sounds absolutely grotesque.
So, blood doping is when you remove your own blood and store it, freeze it, and re-inject it at a later date to kind of artificially increase your red blood cells. So your red blood cells are what carry oxygen, and what you need for kind of endurance performance and stuff like that is oxygen at the tissue, and then the tissue extracts oxygen for energy. So what people do is they'll take pints of blood and save that up, and then they'll re-inject to get that boost in their red blood cell count. And then you can look at that kind of two ways. They can use that for performance in the competition, but they can also use it for performance in their training. So it's quite difficult to detect stuff like this as well, because you can artificially increase your red blood count and your EPO production as well, by going to things like going to altitude camps and stuff like that. So it's notoriously difficult to detect. And also, so for example, like there's people that's went years and years, do you know what I mean, without getting detected this, and then it's going to come back later on after lots of investigation. But yeah, I think there's like kind of new techniques getting developed now. I've seen a lot of PhDs, like PhD studies and advertisements going up of how to kind of clamp down on this kind of thing and how to detect these. So I'm not exactly an expert in this kind of area, but that's kind of how it works. They kind of take their own blood out, re-inject it back in, they get a boost in their red blood cells, which gives them a boost in the ability to carry oxygen, and that improves their
How much
performance.
do they re-inject back in?
So I'm not 100% sure on that actually, but essentially what works is like your blood is made up of like plasma and red blood cells, and your red blood cells are roughly around like 44% of the kind of liquid essentially. And if you remove the plasma and re-inject the blood cells, you end up with a massive spike in the red blood cells in your blood. Does that make sense?
Sorry, just for anyone that's listening, see when you say remove the plasma, what exactly is plasma?
So it's just like water essentially. Do you get me? Okay. So yeah. So remove that and re-inject it back in, and it gives them that spike. So I'm not sure the technicalities of how that works, to be honest. And I don't advise any sports scientists to help people do that. But I've read some articles on that when I was at uni, and apparently it's fairly easy to do these kind of methods of doping, and it's fairly easy to get by drug tests in it as well. Wow. So I read a blog post somewhere, I can't remember who it was though, but what he done is he went to lots of different scientific labs of the people that research doping and EPO and altitude and stuff like this, and he went and asked them how it works and how easy would it be to beat the drug tests, and pretty much got all this information, and then he done it himself. Wow. So he's just an amateur athlete, done it himself and competed in a race, got a drug test and beat the system, and he writes about it and tells you how easy it is to do. He doesn't tell you the ins and outs of exactly what he done, but he tells you this is really easy, this is a problem, somebody needs to address that. So
when you said EPO, what does that stand for?
It's a substance that's secreted from the kidneys. I can't say the long name of it, it's pure technical and I can never say it properly. But essentially, if you go to altitude, what happens is EPO gets secreted and that boosts your red blood cells.
Oh,
do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Artificially.
So it's like the catalyst. Sense? It's like the catalyst for your red blood cell production. Right, okay, I understand.
Yeah, so it's another issue of detecting it, because you could go to an altitude camp or you could go train the altitude chamber, and that could actually increase it when you're not doping. So there's these issues around how do you tell? So
see, for talking's sake, right, that you've got the Olympics has been moved to next year and stuff like that, and say I don't know how many meters above sea level Tokyo is, right, but I presume it's probably higher than we are, right? So could you go and compete in Tokyo having done no altitude training and just get the jag of your own blood, and then you would still be sound?
It's a strange question.
That's what we're here for.
He's a strange dude.
So so there's lots of debate around, you can go to high altitude, but if you're at high altitude, it's hard to train intensely. So a lot of people go up high altitude, stay there, and they do their kind of endurance training up there, and they'll come down low to train high intensity. I'm not too sure about removing, re-injecting, and how that would affect things on performance at altitude, to be honest.
I was just thinking, because obviously if you're getting more red blood cells and then the oxygen's thinner up there, then you'll be able to extract more onto your red blood cells and cart it round about your body. Yeah,
so there's loads of kind of interesting research that show that, like, East African runners at the Olympics in Mexico in like 1980 or something like that, and there's kind of lots of correlations between them winning. There's a big correlation between the people that win these events, endurance, and where they stay, because they usually stay really, really high altitude, and they live, breathe, and train there pretty much. So that's kind of altitude training going to be people get like where you go in, and it's as if you're at tracking like that. We had them at both unis I was at as well. We've also got heat chambers and stuff like that as well. So if you're going abroad to a hotter country, you can acclimatise to that heat before you get there, essentially, or you can go to the country maybe 10, 14 days beforehand. But then that kind of impacts your training for a competition.
So see if you're normally if you're from an area that has it's at a higher altitude, right, and your body is efficient up there, right, and then you come to somewhere down low, are you better prepared?
So there's loads of debate on that as well. How, if you train at altitude, does that make you better at sea level? And I don't know if the research swings either way on that, to be honest. But I know that there's quite a lot of different papers in altitude, but there's loads of different kind of conclusions essentially, and there's loads of different ways to do it. So it's quite difficult to kind of come to one conclusion of how it works.
Yeah, suppose it's probably dependent on the athlete's physiology. Do you know what I mean? Because everybody's different, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a friend of mine, a guy that I knew used to work with my previous job, and he actually
was he Nepalese?
Well, he wasn't Nepalese, but he actually did go to Everest, and he had
the window place.
He made an attempt to climb Everest, and there's like loads of photos and stuff of him. Like, obviously, come back and show photos of your trip to Everest, because it's quite an impressive place to go. As you would. But there's like pictures of him up, and I think he's maybe at like Camp 2 or like one of the camps on the way up, and they're all sat like oxygen tanks in and stuff like that, like, and just looking gnarled up, like just being beaten up by the mountain. And they've got their Sherpas with them, and they're just these wee Nepalese guys that are just buzzing, like fresh as you like, just like, hey, like, just the joys of, we live here all the time. Look at this little English guy like that. Oh my god, mountains just absolutely doing him in. So yeah.
But Everest is a massive, massive task to take on, man.
100%.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm going to stop there. We're going to go for podcast bingo. That's Chris for number 2.
50 minutes, by the way. That's not bad. That's not bad.
100%. Right, anyway, sorry, Gio.
I was just saying, you're a fan of climbing hills, Greg. Maybe you can scale up to Everest at one point.
No, I can barely get up Carman Hill, mate. I don't know if I mentioned this to you the other day. Actually, I had a bit. And it kind of leads into what I was going to talk to you about anyway, about hydration, because I had a wee scare while I was climbing a hill on Friday. Because it was incredibly clammy. It was like 26, 27, and we'd missed the path, and I'd walked like 7.5 miles with like 25 kilos on my back into the woods, and then essentially came to a big horseshoe, and it was like, well, no, you've got to climb this hill or you've got to turn back. So I turned back, and as I was going back, I found the path, and I was like, so I'd done like 14 miles at that point, and then I tried to ascend Ben Vane, which is like notoriously steep. It's like something that I'm Mordor, man. It's just all these mad craggy ass steps, but it's like that. Anyway, so I got about a third of the way up it, and I was looking at the ground, and I looked back up, and suddenly in front of me, people I was with, man, it just started getting odd double, and then I was like, ooh, and so hydration was the problem, I believe, right? But
I like how you added I believe. That's good.
Well, mate, I'm not an S&C coach. Look at me. What I was wanting to talk to you about was hydration, and just about how important it is for athletes. And what I made the mistake of doing actually when I was up that hill was filled my water bottle up from a waterfall, and then just glugged it like rather than look at Chris shaking his head, because I remember when I was in the army, they told us to they told us they
told us to sit till first.
Yeah. Right, so give me some information about hydration.
So the biggest thing about hydration essentially would be that I'm not sure of the exact numbers. I'll maybe tell you that later. But I think something like a 3%. If you're dehydrated by 3%, that can have something like a 30 and 40% negative impact on your performance.
Wow,
So,
really?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you get hydration charts and it kind of shows like the colour of urine. So like they kind of, so the darker kind of deeper yellowy kind of greeny colours is where you kind of browny yellowy colour is where you try to avoid. You might be up somewhere towards kind of clear to a light kind of yellowy tint to it. So it kind of shows just by going to the toilet, you can tell roughly how dehydrated you are.
Okay.
So what I think most people are probably more dehydrated than they think they are because you don't really know. And
Definitely.
a lot of people talk about how like if you're thirsty, you should take a drink, but I think people need to focus on how much they're taking in, because I don't think just wait until you're thirsty and taking a drink helps, because a lot of time by the time that you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated slightly. So I'd imagine that obviously, Greg, when you're saying that you're up a hill, you're exercising at kind of a moderate kind of intensity and it's really hot and clammy, as heat goes up and your core temperature goes up, then you sweat more and you lose electrolytes and you lose water and stuff like that as well. So it's probably a combination of these factors. But as Chris was saying there as well, if you're gulping water, a lot of time marathon runners and stuff like that will take in lots and lots of fluids, but then you feel it in your stomach and it affects their performance. So a lot of time you take like an electrolyte drink, if that makes sense, so you can get the kind of essentials back in without taking in too much liquid. But there's some cool research on showing that people that are dehydrated and not got a lot of water in them makes them slightly lighter, and then their performance in their marathon increases. But it's also more dangerous. So there's kind of issues both ways there.
I definitely find that you're kind of, the more hydrated you are, the more kind of cognizant you are. You're more like you're definitely a lot sharper when you're
brain fuzz kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I nearly said it again. Yeah, absolutely. You definitely do. I find that you're a lot sharper, and you kind of. We used to do it whenever we go out and do like physical exercise and stuff. You'd have to make sure that the night before you'd taken on a lot of extra stuff, extra water, just so that you're fresh the next day. Because you found out if you jacked on yourself and not done anything, not drank anything the night before. Jacked on yourself, some army phrase. If you'd not looked after yourself properly,
it means something completely different when
I realised I was like, I got back into that. Yeah, I'm having a great time today, like guys. Honestly,
if you jacked on yourself,
yeah. To be jacked, so it's not looking after yourself, like
So you definitely need a glass of water if you've jacked on yourself.
Yeah, lose some electrolytes. Brilliant. Well done.
Maybe a protein shake after that as well, Chris.
That's a well done.
couple of bits of pineapple if you want to taste it.
Know your audience, Chris. Know your audience.
Your mum's going to listen to this.
That's all right.
Yeah, anyway, so if we can kind of swerve Chris's strange terminology, and actually we were talking about, when we had a wee chat last night, just about how competitive the industry is, Gio, and what it takes to succeed in the industry.
So
I'll carry on.
So on you go. Continue.
No, I was done, baby.
So I think you're probably referring to like sports science, strength and conditioning, as I refer to lecturing. But both are quite competitive. But I'll kind of talk to more about the kind of sports science side of things. I think maybe 2020 now, like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, people didn't know what sports science was or how it applies to pro football or pro sports or whatever else. And the kind of guy that got this job in strength and conditioning or sports science was the guy that used to lift weights or was good in the gym and kind of knew a bit about stuff, and he got a job kind of automatically from that. And then obviously as kind of times went on, there's more and more kind of sports science degrees, there's more and more accreditations and need done, and then more and more people look for masters. So there's people I know now who are in, for example, a mentor of mine is in a job that now he's been the head of strength and conditioning for 20 odd years in his role, and he's just finishing up his masters just now. But if I was to ever even get a job to be his assistant or anything like that, I would probably need to have a master's just to even get an interview.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So what used to be like a degree and you're set to go, it's now like a degree, a master's, an accreditation by something like the UKSA, which is the UK Strength and Conditioning Association, which is kind of notoriously difficult to pass, and a lot of experience. So it is quite competitive. I applied for a PhD last year, and I had like something like 300 people had applied to it, and I was one of 5 people that got an interview, but I didn't actually get the PhD. But even that, I was like, I'm quite happy with that because it's so competitive. And you see it on Twitter as well, people discussing the kind of topic about what is it you need. Like, do you need a good CV, a good cover letter? Do you need network? Do you need, what is it you need? But essentially, you need everything. You need a degree, a master's, accreditation. You need good experience with either the sport you want to work in, or having played the sport you want to work in, or even having a kind of working with multiple sports, so you learn different kind of styles of coaching or whatever else. And then obviously on top of that, that'll maybe get your CV, if you've got the qualifications, that might get you in the kind of, we'll review his CV later kind of pile, or the yes pile. But then a lot of time, if you've got 5-10 people that's got all the qualifications and everything you want, and you interview the people, then it's probably going to come down to, well, who knows who? Do you know what I mean? Who can put a word in and who can get that job? And then on top of that, there's jobs that aren't even actually advertised. Do you know what I mean? Whether that's right or not, like they should be advertised. But I think a lot of it comes down to network. But network's only important if you've got the kind of prerequisites for the job, essentially.
So do you think that, obviously, like you said, this kind of sports science and S&C, like jobs are fairly recent in like the last kind of 30 years. Do you think that kind of big spike in kind of S&C jobs has caused people to go, oh, hold on a minute, people are doing that sort of thing, I'm going to go and do that? But in actual fact, these people probably aren't the right sort of people for it. Do you find that maybe the case? People go, well, I was good at PE at school, so I'm just going to go and be a sports scientist. Yeah,
so I think when I was at school and I liked PE and sport and stuff like that, if I wanted to go and do a sports course and done sports science then, at 18, say, I probably either wouldn't have completed my degree or I wouldn't be where I am now, kind of thing. I waited a few years. I was 23 when I went back to study. But at that point, I knew what sports science was. I knew what I wanted to do. But I feel like a lot of people in the courses don't really know what it is. They just kind of done it because like, I like sport and I didn't know what else to do and stuff like that. But it really is, if you want to do sports science, you really need to be into it. You need to know what it is. You need to know what you need to be doing alongside uni to kind of get there. And I see so many people come out of uni and they've got no experience working in a lab or working at a team or coaching just like grassroots football or something. Do you know what I mean? Any exposure to actually train people. So I know people that's got a master's degree who've studied for 5 years, but they've worked in ASDA. Do you know what I mean? And they're like, why can I not get a job? And I'm like, well, why should anybody employ you if other people have got a master's and they've been working for the last 5 years as well? They've been putting themselves out there, meeting people and stuff like that as well. So, but I think there's more and more people go to study the degree because it's kind of like a cool subject kind of thing. And a lot of people want to kind of wear a trackie, do you know what I mean, with their initials on it and look cool working with a football club. Do you know what I mean? Rather than actually wanting to learn the science and actually apply it and help athletes. Do you know what I mean? That is definitely an issue. I know you're laughing, Greg, but a lot of people won't take an internship or a voluntary role at a small club because they're like, oh, it's just a small club. But I'm like, well, if a big club's not going to take you, then how are you going to get to the big club? You need to, do you know what I mean? So that kind of annoys me a little bit. People go for the big names, and then it kind of alluded to before, if you go for the big names, they've usually got people in all sorts of departments. So they've got nutritionists, psychologists, sports science, S&C, and you don't get any responsibility. So you don't really learn it in there. So you want to go to the small clubs where they're like that, oh, you've got knowledge on X, Y, Z, can you help us with this and that and this? And you've got all hands on, and you've got room to make mistakes as well, because it's not as important at that stage. So if you go work with a top team, they're not giving you any responsibility if you've never worked there before, because you could fuck shit up. Do you know what I mean? So they're not going to do that. So you're better off starting at the kind of the lower level and working your way up to kind of pro or whatever you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose as well, if you're at that sort of level, then like you say, you're going to be given more leeway to actually have a greater impact as well. I mean, so exactly. And then if you've had a greater impact, like say, if you're in that sort of environment, working at a lower level, that's not like I'd say you're a any given sport. Call it football, right? People in football's not a massive community, like high level competitive football.
No.
The larger clubs to smaller clubs, it's not a very big circle. Everybody will know everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or they'll know somebody who's in these higher levels. So ultimately, if you are going and taking these sorts of roles and showing a willingness to work and actually kind of showing a bit of yourself outside of a CV and, let's be honest, a certificate, because that's once you finish these courses, that's all it is. You've got a certificate to go. Best what, by the way, I've done this. But if you're going to showing yourself and showing that your application and that you can actually add value to these sort of clubs or these sort of different sports, then absolutely, yeah, I don't see why people wouldn't go and take these opportunities.
There's some information I learned from like really good S&C coaches that I look up to. So like Brett Bartholomew and a guy called Kieran and Flat, and they always say, well, for example, people will hire who they know, like, and trust if all things are equal. And if all things are unequal, people will still hire people they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you've done. I mean, but on the other side of that, you can have all the qualifications in the world, but the best prediction of you being able to do the job is you having already previously done a job similar.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So if you've just got a degree but you've never actually worked anywhere, how do they know you're going to be able to do the job? And also, what a degree teaches you and what's required in a job is kind of mismatched a little bit. So there needs to kind of be a bridge there, which essentially is you volunteering and kind of learning how to apply the theory and make it actually into practice and under the constraints of a club or whatever it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's so many people out there that are like incredibly book smart, but it's being able to actually interpret that into a real life situation is invaluable, really. I mean, to have that kind of that learned experience is I completely agree with you on that, mate. I think that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's the same everywhere. Everywhere's getting more and more competitive. Do you know what I mean? If you look at the numbers of people that's got a master's degree now compared to like 10 years ago, it's massively different. Do you know what I mean? Because just the job market is more and more competitive.
Plus, so people are encouraged more into further education, I think, now than they ever were before. You know, it's not just like now you were saying earlier on that when you finish school, then you're told go and get a trade, son. But whereas now you're not. Most people are like, right, well, college or going into university, do you know what I mean? Gap years, no, do you know what I mean?
Well, even if you weren't going to university, it was like for those people who kind of didn't go, like, no, I don't want to go to university. It's like, well, you need to get yourself a trade, sunshine. I mean, hold on a sec. No, don't. I want to go and make boats.
No.
That's so weirdly specific.
It was really specific.
I don't know where that came from. I have no idea. Make boats. I don't know. I'm on fire.
But I think more people go into education.
Sorry. Fuck's sake. Go on.
I think more people go into education or continue the education because they can't just, for example, if you get a degree, it used to be like years ago, like your parents, go get a degree, get your certificate and your whatever degree it is you get, and go get a graduate job, and then that's you set, good to go. Do you know what I mean? It's not like that now. So it's like, you do a 4-year degree, can't get a job. So what do? I'll go back and do a master's because that'll hopefully get me towards the beat the people that's not got a master's.
Yeah.
You come at a master's, still can't get a job. Do you know what I mean? You need to volunteer, whatever else. And I don't think that. I don't know if anybody follows Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V.
Yeah.
He talks about it a lot. It's like that model of education or getting a job doesn't work anymore. Do you know what I mean? Because there's wee guys on YouTube who are opening their presents and videoing it and putting it on YouTube and making £1 million a month. And you're just like, what is going on? So as much as like I value getting a degree and being educated and stuff like that, there's people that want to do all sorts of weird stuff, or not weird stuff, but their own kind of creative stuff.
Make boats, not.
Make boats.
Yeah. But I mean, there's people that can make money from almost anything. Do you know what I mean? So there's a whole thing though. They're now like jumping on to be an entrepreneur and stuff like that. So I think getting education is obviously valuable, but doing your own thing and kind of having whatever it is you're doing aligned with your own values is probably the most important.
Gio, I've got a question to ask you, and it's got nothing to do with what we were talking about a second ago. It just dawned on me there, right? So over the past, say, 30 years, right, which was the timeline that was supplied by Chris Shields, and I'm just taking it as gospel that is correct, right? So over the past 30 years, with the advancements in science and athletes have, because of these scientific advancements, have improved, right, to a level now where it would seem that they are at the peak of human capability, right, or what we think it is, right? Do you think that any further advances in science will push those capabilities further? For example, Usain Bolt, man, he's running 100 metres, just rapid. More rapid than anyone ever before him. But
He was slightly different.
I know, but what I'm trying to say is, though, right, with advances in science and technique and understanding of human physiology, do you think it's possible to push things like that even further?
Yes, but I would say that. So, what were you going to say, Chris, about Usain Bolt being different?
Well, it's just because I'd watched something on this with Usain Bolt. Was it Michael Johnson, the guy who Usain Bolt beat his 100-meter time, and they broke down his actual the way he started the race and the way he ran, and it was even down to kind of like the way his legs were. So obviously you're going to get more. It's like essentially like a piston, basically. If you're kind of the straighter your legs are, the more power you can generate. But his were like off at strange angles and stuff. So he was like quite an inefficient way of running, for his own kind of for his own discipline. I mean, he could have like tightened it up a bit and been quicker.
So what I'd say about Usain Bolt is he's generally a lot taller than most other runners before him. So if you're doing a 100-meter sprint, essentially it comes down to technique and everything else, right? But essentially it comes down to the time of your foot hitting the floor, that contact time, which is like 100th of a second, and the stride length. That is essentially what it comes down to. Do you know what I mean? So what can we get someone to hit the floor and get back off it faster, or can we get their stride length longer? Do you get what I mean? So there's like things there's a TED talk, I can't remember who it's by, but it tells you, it's kind of questioning, is sports science getting athletes better, or is other things getting them better? Essentially, maybe still sports science, but are athletes actually getting better at their sport, or are they wearing better gear? Are they more prepared other ways, if that makes sense? So there's a 100-meter sprint. It tells you like a time from like 1960 to Usain Bolt's time, and it's milliseconds. It's just beeps, and you just hear it going beep, 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 like that, and it's literally milliseconds between someone from 50 years ago to Usain Bolt not long ago. So it's like the track's different, his shoes are different, there's different environments, so wind flow and stuff like that. So are they actually getting better, or are other things playing parts, if that makes sense? But there's definitely, like for games like football and stuff like that, you see like the demands of the sport, it's much more high intensity demands when you look at gameplay, you look at GPS, heart rate and stuff like that than it was 10, 15 years ago. So yeah, I think science can continue to push things forward. But I think that a lot of times, for example, if you look at the 2-hour marathon kind of attempt, a lot of the stuff that went into that would be sports science, but the runner himself, high-level runner, Kipchoge, he's probably not. The advantages came from things like his shoes, the wind flow, the laser time on front of him, showing him the time that he needs to follow, all these different aspects that went into that, and it's probably that his actual physiological output is probably not that much better, if that makes sense. It's probably all these other factors. So people talk about, can we break the 2-hour marathon, which is being done, but it's been done artificially on a flat track under the perfect conditions. So if he does that in race time and it's legal and actually record, then you'll be able to see if science can make it better or not. But I believe it can.
Yeah. It's just interesting, do you know what I mean? Because at some point there's got to be, this cannot get any better.
Well, I think as well, a lot of it's like a mental thing as well. Like if you look at like Roger Bannister ran a 4-minute mile, and before that nobody thought they could run a 4-minute mile for forever. And as soon as he ran that, that year, I believe something like 40 or 50 other people also ran a 4-minute mile that same year.
Wow.
So what happened? Did everybody just get better that first year? Or was it their own self-efficacy, their belief that they can do it because somebody else has done it? Yeah. So that's a massive factor as well.
It's something to think about, because I think when you think about something like the 100 metres, it's so fast, right?
Yeah.
That you physically the human body can't go any faster than that, surely.
Yeah.
Surely. Do you know what I mean? I mean, and no amount of kale and supplements is going to do it. Do you know what I mean? You know.
Or chicken nuggets if you're using both.
Exactly, mate.
Exactly,
Well,
yeah.
did somebody test the chicken nuggets? I don't know.
Well, there's some
some of
other-
his own blood injected into them.
Yeah, no, so that would
Blood
help
nuggets.
for that. But there's also some stats if you go on Google and search for like the 100-meter record times and who's achieved those kind of under 10-second times and stuff like that, and how many people have been done for doping. It's unreal. I think something like, don't quote me on this, but something like the top 50 times, there's only like Usain Bolt is like one of the only athletes that's not been caught doping and repeatedly performed at that high level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I suppose
it's,
genetics must have a huge amount of play in it as well. Do you know what I mean? He's
Yeah,
just built
so-
for that sport.
yeah, so genetics are pretty much what a lot of people always say is if you want to have an elite athlete, then pick their parents properly, because like pretty much 50% of performance is kind of like genetics. Like if you're going to play basketball, I mean, you can play at 5'3", Muggsy or whatever else, but if you're going to be taller, you're going to be better at the sport pretty much automatically. Do you know what I mean? So like limb length, size, all that kind of thing can obviously influence your kind of selection for a sport or whatever else. Do you know what I mean? And that's where it kind of comes into like when you're younger, a lot of people trying to like they do a thing called early specialization. So like youth athletes will just focus on, say for example, you guys are into football, they'll just play football and that's it, and they won't play anything else. And what happens alongside that is then rather than developing like fundamental skills, all movement skills, they just focus on the skills for football.
Mm-hmm.
So what often happens is if you develop multiple skills, then one sport you might want to play, you might find that like, actually I'm not going to make it in this sport, but you might be able to transfer to another sport.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, we've done some testing with guys that were badminton players and they weren't far off speeds of guys that were athletics. Do you know what I mean? So
All right.
do you know what I mean? So over short periods. So it's things like that. Like there's multiple cases athletes that have transferred from one sport to another because maybe they fit the mold of a sport better, but they've chosen to go another sport. And a lot of times you hear like Olympic athletes talking about this. They say like they maybe approach to say you might be better in this sport, but they're like, I don't want to do that sport.
Yeah.
Like I want to do this
Yeah.
sport. So you're kind of making this decision. Are you going to continue this kind of battle to win a medal in a sport where you could go another sport and you might actually be better at that sport just by default from your training that you've done up until this point?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's a kind of major thing. 'Cause I think a lot of people do early specialization in kind of kids and kind of burn them out too early, and they don't have fundamental movements to then let them go into multiple other kind of avenues, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Cool, man.
Yeah, that is interesting. Mad, isn't it? Like it's crazy. Could it be like when you say it, there is a lot of gymnasts and stuff. Just when you're talking about people moving into other sports, it just automatically made me think of like CrossFit. CrossFit's massive for that at the moment because it's a lot of athletes, a lot of people who are like clearly very very good athletes in their specific fields. You hear a lot of gymnasts kind of moving across to.
Well, Ali Crawford did it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so with Ali Crawford on the podcast, like but that's maybe within our first 10 episodes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And she was like she was a gymnast and then moved across to to CrossFit, and it's just find all those kind of fundamental movements that she'd learned in gymnastics when she kind of got to a point where it was kind of, I don't want to say past competing, but no, she's kind of CrossFit moving into another sport allowed her to become competitive again.
Yeah,
At another sport.
It's like,
I mean.
you get a lot of situations where, say for example, you've got a under 16 team, and you've got like growth and maturation plays a massive factor in these kind of things. So you could have like working in an academy, and you could have someone under 16. And someone could be 15 years old, but physically, in terms of growth and maturation, they might look like they're 13. and that another 15s might look like he's 17.
Man,
makes sense. At that same age, you get what I mean? And it also depends. It also depends when they're born in the calendar year and when the cut-offs are for the kind of categorization of their ages for the sport. So you could have someone that's essentially born in December and someone that's born in January. Let's just say it's the January, December. Someone's born in January, someone's born in December. Someone in that same squad is essentially 1 year younger than another person. So let's say, Greg, I'm 1 year kind of younger than you are, and we're both 15. You might look like you're 17 though. Yeah. And I might actually be almost 14, but might look like I'm 12. So there's like this 4 or 5 years age gap that can happen. So cutting people off too early is a massive issue, because it's like a bad idea for talent identification, because for all the coaches know or whatever else, the next year I might come back after summer and have a massive spike, and you might be bigger, better and stronger than me, but I might know the game better than you, but I can't show that yet because I'm not able. I've not got the physical qualities yet, but the physical qualities will come. Do you know what I mean? So I might get in the gym, I might actually have a spike in growth slightly after you. I might end up bigger than you, faster than you, quicker than you. Do you know what I mean? Like all round better than you. But what else have I been doing? I've also been sitting while you've been playing, and I've been learning the game. So now I've actually got a better tactical, technical mind than you have as well. But a lot of these people get cut too early. Do you know what I mean? And don't get given the opportunity because they're not being able to win games right now. But if you're looking at academy setups and from like youth development to senior, it shouldn't be about right now. It should be like, you kind of get like, you shouldn't be like thinking about right now. It should be thinking about, do you want to be a junior champion or do you want to be a senior champion? If that makes sense. And it's a long-term, it's a long-term athlete development model. They try and get someone to be the best they can be at 21, 22 to actually compete at the highest level, rather than cutting them at 17 because they're not winning games for you. Do you get what I mean?
There's countless stories of that, isn't there? The guys in professional football who've been overlooked and overturned, and then dropped down a few levels, and then all of a sudden hit this massive growth spurt, or like you say, kind of gone down to low level and learned
Jamie Vardy
again. Yeah, 100%. Like, loads of them, so many of them.
Yeah, so I think that's a massive issue. But yeah, I think to get high level athletes, you need to pick your parents right, and I think talent ID comes in quite a lot as well, like being able to determine who's going to be good and who fits your club or whatever else, because you have like 11 of the best players playing football against another 11 best players, but the cohesion and team strategy from one can be better than another. Do you know what I mean? And how they complement each other can be better than another team. So there's so many factors that go into kind of high level performance. Do you know what I mean? And it's trying to control for all them to try and get stuff that we can make like actionable and can make decisions on that's actually going to make like a difference.
Before we finish up this evening, gentlemen, because Gio, you work in this sort of health and fitness industry, and you must get a barrage of questions from like your pals who are just like, oh, what do I do in the gym and all that, right? So I thought for a bit of fun, right, we should ask Gio's FAQs, things that you're sick to death of people asking you, right? So, because I know you've got some. I know that it's like, oh, how do I get swole, bro? Or that part, right? How do I get a six pack, mate? Right, so hit us with them.
So the biggest one for me essentially is like, how do you get lean? Do you know what I mean? Like, just people just have no idea about nutrition, and it's not really their fault either. Because
Juice Plus, isn't it? Juice Plus, isn't it?
Juice Plus,
Herbalife,
Herbalife, that's it.
I'm
actually a Herbalife rep.
Right, cool. So everyone can get him up at George Wishart. Hit him up for that Herbalife.
Let's just be clear, I'm definitely
discount
not.
code CDDC podcast.
No, so I think a lot of people get sold on these mad ideas. So I think social media makes it massively worse as well. Like people go on Instagram and they see someone that looks fairly fit, and again comes back to genetics. They might look fairly fit because of genetics. Like some people are different. Do you know what I mean? Some people are naturally leaner, and they're selling training programs and diet plans to people that's gullible and think that, oh, I'll look at that if I follow their plan. But that's not how it works, really. No. So there's loads of people that look amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, there's loads and loads of people that look absolutely amazing, but they're not qualified to help you get to look like that. And there is people that look amazing that are qualified. Do you know what I mean? So how do you work it out? How do you work out who knows what and who's going to help you? And loads of people are just absolute idiots who try to sell people on like mad dreams that don't work or make them really unhealthy. So I think that the whole nutrition thing is the worst thing for me. People asking like, oh, like, are carbs bad? Like, no. Like, what are you talking about? Can I eat carbs after 6? Aye. Do you get what I mean? Like, and they just have no idea what's going on. So basically, if you're wanting to lose weight or gain weight or whatever else, it's really dead easy. Easy but not hard to implement. It's simple in theory, but essentially it just comes down to numbers. It's like, how many calories are you consuming? So let's just say, to make it easy, say it's an average weighted female, which is roughly 2,000 calories. It's like an RDA for that person. So 2,000 calories that you take in, and you've got a thing called your basal metabolic rate, which is how many calories your body's going to burn just kind of being alive, if that makes sense. Yeah, so no activity and stuff like that, just you keeping yourself alive, essentially, if you're just lying about not doing anything. So
even or not.
Aye, that's exactly right. So you've got that. So that's how many calories you're going to burn per day, regardless, kind of thing. And you take in 2,000 calories, and if you take in 2,000 calories, and your BMR say 1,500, right? You need to burn 500 additional calories to get that to balance back out for you to stay the same weight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you can take in 2,000 calories and you stay the same weight every day, then there's two ways to then get you to lose weight. It's either you doing more activity, which would burn more calories. So let's say you go a 45-minute walk and you burn 300 calories, say. Then that's reducing 300 calories from your kind of balance, if that makes sense. Yeah. Or you can reduce calories. So you can take 300 calories out of your diet. Yeah. But that's kind of how you're going to do it. You're going to either go in or you're going to take calories out of your diet. Yeah. And then that'll put you in a calorie deficit. So your body, every day, you eat what you eat normally, and you go to work and you don't exercise, and you burn 2,000 calories every day. Okay, well, now we're going to add X amount of exercise that burns X amount of calories, and that's going to put you in a negative energy balance. So 2,000 calories a day. Now we're going to do exercise 4 times a week that burns 300 calories, say, which is 1,200 calories per week that you're in a net negative balance. And then on top of that, we might reduce your calories every single day by 300 calories as well. Yeah, so that's 2,100 calories over the week. So now we've got 1,200 calories and 2,100 calories. Combine them together for 3,300 calories that you've reduced essentially per week. Now, there's kind of some equations that kind of say that 3,500 calories would equal 1 pound of weight loss. It's not exact, but it's quite a good way to go about it. So we've kind of just created there with the arbitrary numbers, 3,300. So let's just say we did make 3,500. That would equate to you losing 1 pound per week. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's literally just then, if I take in this much, I need to burn that much off. If I don't burn that much off, then whatever's left over, I'm going to gain weight based on that. Or if I have got a little bit less, I'll lose weight based on that. So it's literally just you trying to stay like maintenance here, and in a surplus here, you get too many calories, or being in a negative energy balance, being at a deficit here. Right. So that's pretty much it. It's just come down to calories. But the problem is that people think that they can just eat good food. So what if I eat just good food? That'll be good. Well, you can overeat in good food as well. Mm-hmm. So if you just eat chicken, broccoli, and, do you know what I mean, and drink water, you can still eat too many calories on that food, and you'll still gain weight. But if you ate McDonald's every day and you stayed under your calories, you'll still lose weight. So food isn't really the enemy. A lot of people are like, that's bad food, that's good food. I'm like, well, it's not. It's just, you don't get bad foods and good foods. You just get bad diets, essentially. And the thing that I kind of stress to people all the time is, if you're really overweight and you've got a really bad diet and you don't eat any healthy foods, a lot of people, a lot of PTs and stuff like that will try and get them on a super healthy diet right from get-go. And it's too drastic a change. Mm-hmm. So I've wrote diet plans for people and stuff like that. And if you were to look at them, you go, what are you on about? You're mental. So like prescribing this to these people, I'm like, but you don't know the context. Do you get me? Mm-hmm. So you're trying to get them over a long period of time to convert into healthy eating and stuff like that. But what I would argue is, if someone's
a smack addict using methadone, isn't it?
Yeah. Weird analogy, but yeah.
Well, it is, man. You don't go cold turkey off a smack. You get the methadone in you.
Yeah, yeah. But like, if you're 100 pounds overweight and we want you to lose 100 pounds, right? I would be I would be happier if you ate whatever it is that you need to eat, right? But stayed within your calories, because you're going to lose weight. Then you're eating really good food, but still staying overweight. Because by reducing 100 pounds of weight on you, we're going to significantly reduce any risk of disease and stuff like that for you, even if you're eating bad food still. Yeah. So the first thing that I can tackle is, let's tackle you actually losing the weight that's actually causing you, like, your life expectancy to be lower. And then over time, we'll start putting things in, like if you drink loads of Coke, we'll start putting in Diet Coke. Actually, a PT client, I was speaking about this the other day to someone, I had a PT client who had a lot of weight to lose. And she was saying that she drank a lot of Coke, like 2+ liters of Coke per day, which is a lot of calories. Yeah, right? And I says, can't you just drink Diet Coke? No, I don't want you drinking 2 liters of Diet Coke either, to be honest, but could we change that to Diet Coke? And she's like, nah. I went, well, what about Pepsi Max, Coke Zero, Coke Life, or whatever that was called? All these different options. Nah. I'm like, how come? Have you tried it? No, I don't like any of them. And I was like, right, okay. I was like, okay, tell you what, I was PTing her on like Tuesday, and she was coming back on a Friday 2 times a week. I says, right, come in on Friday, 3 o'clock, I'm going to have Coke here, Diet Coke, Pepsi, Pepsi Max, loads of different Cokes. And I said, I want you to tell me what one Coke is. And then she's like, oh. And she came in, the night before, she came into the PT session, she messaged me saying, with a picture of her Diet or Coke Zero, or that, oh, I've actually got on board with it, I can drink it and stuff like that. And she came in, and from that morning on, she kind of got on board with these small changes, because essentially, to me, a can of Coke Zero is like the difference between 150 calories and no calories. So even if I wasn't watching my weight, I would still want to drink a can that's got no calories and have 150 calories that I could go and eat something else with.
Yep.
You get what I mean? Even if I'm not trying to be healthy or whatever else, I'd still rather have a liquid drink that's got no calories. It gives me more calories to eat on anything. Do you get what I mean?
Yep.
So from that point on, that she kind of bought into that kind of concept. And then obviously it's like, try to go from full fat milk to semi-skimmed, taking away sugar and putting sweetener, going from making, like, eating 2 rolls and bacon for breakfast, let's go down to 1. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then we'll go from a roll and that to maybe something more healthier, maybe to, like, let's say a cereal that they like, but it might not be that healthy. Cocoa Pops, right? We'll have Cocoa Pops now. They're on cereal though. So now you can try to get cereal from into Cocoa Pops, into cornflakes, into porridge with nuts and berries. Do you know what I mean? These kind of things. And eventually over time, they've went from something that's horrendous for the breakfast to something that's actually pretty good. And you do that per meal essentially. Yeah, but it all comes into the calories as well. Do you know what I mean? So even if you were still eating all that kind of crappy food, if you were under your calorie kind of maintenance level, you'd still lose weight. And that's kind of all it comes down to. It's just an energy balance. But there's so many people that's like scared of carbohydrates. Should I go paleo? Is being a vegan better? Do you know what I mean? Like, should I do intermittent fasting, which is when you like maybe fast for 16 hours or so and only eat in an 8-hour period? But all these diets have the same thing in common, which is a negative energy balance. So if you do intermittent fasting, you don't eat for 16 hours and you only eat in an 8-hour window, well, you're usually up for 16 hours, usually eat over 16 hours, now you've only 8 hours. So even if you eat a lot of crap, most of the time you're going to eat less than what you would usually eat over a whole day. So it's nothing to do with this magical 8 hours you've got. It's just the fact that you end up eating less calories than you used to. And that's it. You've got things like 5 and 2 as well, where you have like 5 days you just eat normally and 2 days you eat 500 calories. And that's it. It's like, but you don't need to do that. You can just take the calories and reduce them from every day.
Yeah.
And so these kind of drastic measures are not sustainable. People are not able to do it. Any people to do lose weight, what usually happens is they lose weight, they go back to the way they used to eat, and then they'll soon add that weight back on. And sometimes, most often or not, they actually gain more weight as well. So picking something that's sustainable, it doesn't need, if you're trying to get lean, it doesn't need to be the healthiest thing ever. Do you know what I mean? But healthy options are obviously better. Healthy options are most likely to be lower calorie. But there's things like avocado. People have avocado and toast with eggs. I'm like, wow, that's a massive breakfast. Like if you're eating like a whole avocado, because it's full of fat. Do you know what I mean? But people think that's healthy. But healthy food's got a lot of calories as well. So it's managing the calories, end off, that's it. Do you know what I mean? But that's the main one for me, essentially. It's a massive topic though. Do you know what I mean? I think people get confused by all these different things.
I think a bit of clarity on it is definitely needed. But I think you're right. There's too many outside influences giving contradicting views. Do you know what I mean? And I think that you're right. Social media, and you listen to some guy online, he's gaining, I take these supplements and look at this, boom, 6-pack. Do you know what I mean? And folk are like, I want to do that because it's easy. Whereas in actual fact, just do a bit of exercise, bro, and don't eat pies.
Eat a wee bit less. Aye. It goes down to your kind of the way society is at the moment as well. It's this kind of need for instant results in everything that we're doing. I mean, you look at it like, you remember that the internet was like when we were when we were younger. You had the one family computer, and you sat on it, and you had to wait for somebody who was off the phone. You get the weird dial-up tone. It took ages. It took about 5 minutes to load a picture. Whereas now you can get it all instantly on your phone. I mean, so it's just
it's pure instant gratification.
Yeah, everybody just wants that kind of instant gratification, but it doesn't quite work that way with your diet and your kind of like losing weight.
Yeah, it's like scrolling through Instagram and you see stuff you like, and it's like, so we had dopamine. You see something that's more in depth or more thought provoking, stuff like that. I can't bored with that. I'll just keep scrolling and getting my hit of dopamine. Do you get what I mean? And that's the whole point. That's why Instagram and Facebook are made that way, because they just slide forever, because you're just continually going and going and going. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it's the same thing. It's like you wake up, you do some crazy diets where you wake up and you've lost a few pounds and you feel good, which is good. Do you know what I mean? But it's not going to last.
Yeah.
Whereas you could each week lose a pound and a half, 2 pounds or whatever else. The way I kind of do it with clients that I had is roughly 1% of your body weight per week. So if you're, let's say you're a male that's like 220 pounds, but your healthy weight essentially maybe 180, you've got 40 pounds to lose. Well, I'll go, right, well, 1% of that per week is 2.2 pounds. Yeah, so over between like about 20 odd weeks, that's not that long, it's 5 months, and you're dropping 40 pounds or so. Do you know what I mean? And it's steady. It might not be completely linear, but you're going to go down slightly up, down, up, like that. Over time, we're going to get that weight drop, and you're also going to be able to do it sustainably. And the way I do it as well is, if I program for people and I give them nutrition, not for athletes, but for PT clients and stuff like that, I'll give them their calorie amount, but I'll only give them 80% of what I want them to eat. So I'll tell them, like, say I'm doing meal plans for you, I'll do a meal plan for you and say, here's what I want you to eat. Your calorie amount is 2,400, but 20% of that, I want you to do whatever you want with, if that makes sense. So I'll give you a food that's only 80% of the whole diet and say, the other 20%, go eat whatever you want, whether that's a bit of ice cream, a coffee in the morning. Like, I like a coffee in the morning. Do you know what I mean? Like a nice latte. So coffee in the morning, whatever it is that's going to keep you sticking to that diet. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So if I can say you've got 400 calories to play with, that could be a 100 calorie latte, do you know what I mean, that you like every morning. It could be, I don't know, it could be like a wee dessert after dinner that keeps you going. Do you know what I mean? It could be a bit of sugar during training or whatever else. Do you know what I mean? That's something you like, and that kind of keeps you going throughout the diet essentially. Mm-hmm. And it can get more complex where you put in like days where you have higher calories and lower calories based on training and stuff like that. But most people don't need to concern themselves with that. Mm-hmm. So most people get caught up in all these complicated methods when it is really just how many calories you're eating. Track your calories. If you're not losing weight, you're eating too many calories. Mm-hmm. Drop some calories or exercise a bit more. Do you know what I mean? Or do a combination of both, which is essentially the best. And then track your weight again, and you'll soon see it going down. If it's going down at a steady rate, continue on the calories. Mm-hmm. If it starts to plateau, you might need to drop your calories slightly or increase your output. And that just continues on and on and on until you've got to the weight that you want to be. And then usually you have like a kind of maintenance phase where you stay that weight for a little while before you kind of up your calories back a little bit. Because obviously, when you get to the weight you want to be, you're still on calories that are dieting calories that are losing weight for you. So you can actually add in some more calories again and still stay that same weight.
Right, okay.
And that's usually your new kind of calorie target, and you just focus on staying at that level, if that makes sense. But people go to this yo-yo dieting. Yep. It kind of puts people into massive issues with like eating disorders and stuff like that as well. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of people you see on Instagram that look amazing and stuff like that, a lot of them have got body dysmorphia and all sorts of issues that you don't see, and are selling you programs that they don't believe in. Do you know what I mean? It's a nightmare, to be honest. But you need to have some sort of education or some sort of know-how about you to understand who's talking nonsense and who's actually there to help you. And it's difficult for the kind of general population who don't have a clue and who are desperate to lose weight. So they're going to go for 12 weeks, they'll lose 4 stone. I'll go with that one. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you get what I mean? And it causes all sorts of issues. That's only the kind of one topic there, Greg, on nutrition.
That's all right, mate. That's all right. I mean, it's
sounds like a whole separate podcast, mate.
I know, man.
Get you come back in and do Geo's FAQs.
Well, I think we'll finish up there this evening, gentlemen. Geo, that was incredibly interesting, mate. That was shone a lot of light on things that I just didn't know about, and that's what we're here for.
Which is a lot of stuff.
That is a lot of stuff. Listen, mate.
Just kidding.
Aye. Come on. And for anyone who didn't realise, I mean, everyone learned that Chris was in the army at one point. So
Yeah, of course, yeah.
right, anyway, gentlemen, I'm just going to sign off just now. But Gio, thanks for coming in or coming on.
Thanks for inviting me.
No worries, mate. No worries.
Anytime.
So thanks for listening, folks, and please hit those like and subscribe buttons.